Oh, snaps. I always forget to do this too. I always forget to go on so I could see. Well, I guess you could just read them to me.
Oh, the messages?
Yeah, because we're always all right. Ready?
I think we're still loading on the site.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, I think we're on.
Oh, snaps. I always forget to do this too.
Oh, oh, oh,
I always
oh.
forget to go on so see. Well, I guess
Okay. I had the feedback coming in, but we're good now. We are on live.
let me see if I could get it up here.
Okay.
Oh, it is. All right. It's a great morning, great evening, great afternoon, depending where you're around this beautiful planet, this amazing universe. Welcome to Brown and Spiritual AF, episode 14?
Yep.
1-4. Oh my gosh, Isela, did you ever think we'd have 14 episodes already?
No, like seriously, no.
And I never even thought we would have one episode. It is crazy. It's really interesting to see, like, to think how far we've come so far. So thank you, everybody that's been rocking with us for these 14 episodes. Now we have to start thinking bigger outside of the box and where we go from here. So today's topic is going to be on the types of books that are our top 3 favorite books of all time.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Oh my gosh, it's going to be a tough one, guys. So I want y'all to start just thinking about what books are in your top 3 right now, and go ahead and give us the comments. Go ahead and start listing them so then we can see what you really have. Isela, you want to go ahead and kick us off and why you thought this was a great idea to step forward with?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I get asked all the time, especially as someone is starting to become aware of the truth of who they are, or they want to kind of start in the path of letting go of what no longer serves them. And so it's like, it's great because they hear the podcast for an hour, or they might come to one of my live sessions and they're like, where do we find more? How do we get the information in the same sort of way? And I have to tell you, when you look at all the spiritual books that are out there, I'd say spiritual and some metaphysical books that really are about coming to know the truth of who you are, they all pretty much have the same message. It's just the way that it's delivered. And that's what's so important, is that you have to find what resonates with you. And so Mark and I are going to share our top 3. And I have to tell you, I really, really struggled with this because I have at least 15 books that are my favorites, that somehow played a role in, I think, gaining a deeper awareness within myself. And so coming to 3 was really hard. But before we start this, I just want to share that Mark and I are both part of the Arizona Enlightenment Center. And one of the ways, or the way we kind of came together, was on our weekly A Course of Love sessions that we do virtually. And basically what we do is we read A Course of Love, and we take turns reading it as a group. And I have to tell you, it started with A Course in Miracles. So to me, that's like the first book. And A Course of Love is the second book. And you don't have to read them both. But for me, it was really helpful because it helped me understand the ego in A Course in Miracles. And in Course of Love, I'll tell you, just by reading it, something magical happened within me. I didn't have to do a lot of work. I didn't have to intentionally make some decisions. I just had to lean into it from a very open-hearted space, and amazing things happened for me. And it was in that dialogue of reading and sharing our stories where Mark and I started to get to know one another a little bit better. And then one day I was like, I think we're supposed to do a podcast together. And so that's why I just want to share from the front end that was an important book to, I think, the both of us.
Yes, it was a very important book to the both of us, because that I'd never heard of it. I've heard of the group that you guys had, and what was it? Course of Miracles was the first one I heard Heather speak about and whatnot.
Right.
And that was like, that didn't I was like, what? That didn't really call to me as much. But then I heard that you guys had your Course of Love, right? And that you guys were coming together and you guys were showing up. And then I think I started when once again when 2020 hit and you guys started doing it on Wednesdays.
Right.
Right. And so that's why I was like, you know what, it's going to be online. I can do it from the comfort of my home. Let's just see what this is about. And I read the book actually before we went and did the thing. So I went through it a half of second time. I didn't finish the whole way through the second time, but it really changed the way I looked at things. And it, once again, it brought me and Isela together. So now I kind of understand the whole synchronicity of it all.
Mhm. It's amazing when you really pay attention to those synchronicities. How I really am a strong believer. This is from The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite books. It's a fiction book, but it really is. It speaks to the idea of that the universe conspires for you. It's not working against you, it conspires for you. And so the notion is to really pay attention to the synchronicities and how things are presented, and that opportunities are always there for us. It's just, number one, if we're paying attention, and number two, if we're willing to step into it. Because when I was like, it was in the middle of our session too. It wasn't even afterwards. I'm like, Mark, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? You want to do that together? And it was just an idea. And next thing you know, I mean, within 2 days, we had decided on a logo. We didn't have an idea of what we were going to talk about. I don't know that we still know what we're going to talk about.
We know.
But it really is amazing how things play out when you pay attention.
Yes, when you do pay attention, right? I do remember. I remember that day you were like, "Can you stay after real quick? I want to talk to you." And I was like, "Uh-oh," you know what I mean? And then boom, here we are, Brown and Spiritual AF number 14. So is The Alchemist, is that one of your 3 books you're going with? Is that okay? I was just double checking. I wanted to make it clear because I was like, I like that book's on my shelf too. You know what I mean? So how do you want to start this off?
I guess you go first. Well, you do one and then I'll do one and then we'll just kind of play off of one another. Does that work for you?
Yeah, it really does work for me. You know what I mean? Because this is a tough one, guys. I didn't start reading, I shit you not, until in my 30s, right? Yeah, believe it or not, guys, I'm in my 30s. I know. I'm very modest. You know what I mean? Confident. So it's really tough to really narrow it down because I've read so much since then, right? So should I start with number 3 or my number 1 book? You know what? I'm gonna start with number 3, I think.
Okay.
I think there's a book called The Slight Edge, right? Jeff something, I forgot what his name was, right? But it was really one of my first personal development books that I read. Right. It really got me into it. And it started because network marketing got me into personal development. Right.
Oh, that's interesting. How did that happen?
Well, because a lot of it that they teach you in order to grow your business is a lot of personal work. Right. So a lot of the techniques, a lot of the things that get you in order to go out there and share with the world. Right. Because what we're doing is sharing information and trying to get people signed up. Right. Enrollment is what network marketing is about. Right. And in order to enroll people, it's all about storytelling, selling yourself, basically. Right. It's never about the product. Well, I didn't learn that until later on in life that, wait a minute, people are buying into me. It doesn't matter what the fuck I'm selling. Right. I did that all the way through school. Right. With like seeds and weed. Right. And I could convince people, right, that this was the best ever. But the got seeds in it. Yeah, those are magical seeds. Right. Now you can grow your own. Right. Like I had this thing, but it was me they were buying into, and they were comfortable with me. So fast forward, The Slight Edge, right? The Slight Edge was the first time, man, I'm trying to remember. His name is Jeff something. Really interesting 2 things, guys, is these books that are on my top 3, I do not have because I gifted them to other people, right? So that's why I'm not going to have a physical copy of any of these books that I'm going to talk about today. But The Slight Edge was the first time that I really understood that you could go for what it is you want in life. As long as you know why you're doing it, the how doesn't matter. And as long as you stay consistent with it, you could create anything in your life that you want, right? So it's the Slight Edge that really got the wheels turning, right, for me. And it made sense. Slight edge. What gives people the edge in life? What makes successful people successful? They don't fucking give up, and they try and they go and they do it again. They dust themselves off and they get up again. Right. And so that was the very first book that really got my attention, was The Slight Edge. Oh, and the guy that happened, because I was in a company called Nerium, right? And the guy that started Nerium actually wrote that book. So it came in a package that I bought.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
Yeah.
Synchronicity, right?
Yeah. Right. That was really amazing. So people always say, "Oh, how is that network marketing stuff going?" It's like, well, I don't do none of that stuff anymore. I kind of network market for myself. However, it was the beginning of a turning point for my life, which helped me get my health under control. Right? Because that what's really got me thinking about walking around the block while I was all jiggly and chubby, right? It was a slight edge that got me to believe that I could do it, and it was up to me in order to make shit happen. There we go. Slight edge, people. Go look
His
it up.
name is Jeff Olson.
Jeff Olson. Yay. And he's not the Olsen twins dad, guys. It's not him. That's not him. Promise.
I will drop that link for Amazon in the comments below when we're done with this recording. And so if you are interested in that, it's about $22 for the book, but it sounds like it really was a pivotal moment for you in terms of, I think where it begins sometimes is taking our power back, like recognizing that we have the ability to change the trajectory of our lives. And I think that a lot of us grow up in, at least for me anyway, where shit happens to you and, poor you, in the what my family would say as así es la vida, it's like that's the way life is. You just got to, get through it and hope that you survive and, pray for the moments of connection, right? And family. And so the idea that you could actually change the trajectory of your experience and have the life that you have always been intended to have. And I think is a huge monumental pivot for people.
I think that was the first time in my life I was like, holy shit, I think I do like to read. Right? Like, where were these books in middle school and high school? Like, that other shit put me to sleep. But this, it really woke something up in me. So yes, it was a pivotal point in my life, and it gave me back my power, right?
Yeah.
It really taught me that, hey, this is the hand you were dealt. It could still be a winning hand if you choose to, if you play it properly, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah. So one of the first books, the way that I put these 3 books together was really about the different times in my life and what was instrumental to me. So I've been in this spiritual journey since I was 18 years of age. I would say even before then, because I knew something was not quite right in my home life. And I shared in another podcast that I had seen Oprah on TV who said, no child should ever be treated this way. And I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean no child should ever be treated this way? Like, don't all people treat their children this way? And so it was in that moment that I made the decision to survive my circumstances and that I would change my life. And when I went out into life as an adult, as a young adult, I just assumed that magically, because I didn't have to live under the abusive climate that I had grown up in, that my life would be different. Well, that's not the way the brain works. And I suffered from depression, and I was manifesting physical at 17 and 18 and 19, then being diagnosed with a thyroid issue at 19. And I was like, what the hell? I'm 19. Why is this shit happening? And I'm not exactly even sure how this book fell into my, life, but it was the first book. It's called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Oh, Louise Hay.
Yeah, I think it was one of her first published books under her publishing company. And here's a little side thing, she was in her 60s when she started writing. So her big publishing company of Hay House didn't show up in her life until, the later chapters in her life. So it's really fascinating to me. But in this book, the first thing that I remember reading was You Chose Your Parents. And I was like, what the fuck? No, why would I choose a situation like this? That really pissed me off. And then as I read, I started to recognize that there was a reason for the experience that goes beyond that goes beyond this physical life that we're living. And in the back of the book, there are all these ailments that are listed. And so it talks about, like knee problems or my thyroid issue. And her belief system, because she had cancer, was that she could change her mind about it through affirmations and belief systems. And that she could, because it was the manifestation of the dis-ease comes from an emotional aspect within us. And so the word dis-ease, if you put a hyphen between the S and the E, is really that manifestation. And so I was like, oh, like I can change this. That to me was like, I had never heard of such a thing. And so I started working on my depression and the affirmations for my thyroid problem. I started working on whatever came up, I was going to change my mind about it. And lo and behold, I mean, it was like several years later, but my thyroid numbers started coming up at normal. It's like my depression, I started to be able to see clearly and be able to work through that more effectively. It was life-changing for me.
That is, you choose your parents. That's that crazy shit.
Right?
That's the crazy. I told you guys. Remember, we talked to you guys about the things that are gonna come along this journey, right? So I remember the first time I heard about that book, I met a friend at the gym, right? Well, she was really cute, so I wanted to get to know her, right? But she told me a story. And we're still acquaintances. We're still kind of friends, I mean, we follow each other on Instagram or whatever. But she brought that book to my attention because she was going through a time in her life where she was really ill, right? And the story that she talked about, that book fell into her lap, right, at a hotel on a vacation because she was withering away, and that book just happened to show up in a lobby that she was sitting in waiting to take a shower because the pipes bursted in their hotel. So she had to like basically crawl herself down to this other area of the hotel in order to take a shower, right? And as people were waiting to take the shower, she just happened to look down and boom, this book was there, right? And then she told me how it started to change her life. And that was around the time where I just had read The Slight Edge. So this was the beginning of my journey. So that's really cool how those stories kind of connect, right? Wow. You can't make this shit up, people. Wow.
Yeah, so it was a really instrumental, I think, very early on. Again, the idea that life isn't happening to me where I'm a victim of my situation. Like I can take my power back and I can make changes, not only to my belief systems, but how it impacts me physiologically in terms of illnesses.
Wow.
Yep. What's your next book?
Oh man. Oh, this one's a toss up. It's a toss up, right? Because this next book really, oh man, it's really tough. It's by the same family, right? These two books that are in my mind right now, right? I was thinking about this all day because there's just so many. And I was like, how do I have to break it down? I didn't think about it too much because I know that if I thought about it too much, I'd get all jumbled up. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go on spot. So I'm freestyling this, people, like I do most of the shit that I do. Right. So it's a toss up between the 4 agreements and the 5 levels of attachment. Right. They kind of go hand in hand because I read them very similar, but I think I'm going to go with the 5 levels of attachment. Right. Because the 5th level I believe in there is fanaticism. Right. And if people know me, if you're listening to this and you know me, I used to be a football fanatic. Right. And I was very fanatical about women too, right? And they were both detrimental to my health because it was the wrong type of fanaticism, right? I didn't know how to step out of being a fanatic, right? I didn't know how to step out. It was just on all the time, meaning I ate, slept, and shit football or women, right? If that makes sense. So this level really put it into perspective for me, right? There's an analogy in there where he talks about it's tough to remember this stuff, right? I listened to the book. I read the book twice. I listened to it not too long ago, actually. And he talks about somebody drinking a glass of wine, right? And then the fanatic wine drinker is going to sit there and try to pick out all the taste. The way he has a palate is really like pay attention and start judging the glass of wine on how it tastes versus just enjoying
Mm.
The wine from the authentic self, which is level 1, right? I believe. And just for the experience of tasting this delicious wine, what it's for, you start breaking it down, right? Start thinking about it critically. So whoa, that was one of the first times that really helped me start looking at football just as a game, just as a sport, because at one point in my life, it really ruled it, right? Like football could ruin my whole fucking year. Like if my team went into the playoffs or didn't make it to the playoffs, it would ruin it until football started again. And I thought to myself, there's so much more to life than football. There's so much more life, such much more to life. So I think I'm going to go with the 5 levels of attachment, because it's really helped me step back and just be present. And really, it's about self-love, right?
Wow.
When it comes down to it, it's really about just being who you are and engaging in the world at that moment. So I'm going to go with that one.
I think the other piece to this, now never read that book, but I wonder if the other piece to this, in terms of the spiritual alignment, is the experience of being fully present without the need to judge it or to label it. Because I think what happens is we go into experiences, and even like what you said about women or in relationships, there may be a relationship that is not a bad relationship, it's a good relationship, but because we're in the practice of self-sabotage, we're in the practice of like picking out the things that oftentimes are issues with ourselves, but we're picking it out in someone else. The need to judge keeps us separated. But a lot of us, in terms of our patterns of behavior, kick right into that state of judgment. And so I think that what that says to me is, if you're watching football, simply watch it and have the experience of it. If you're engaging with people, or you're out on a date, or you're in a relationship, the practice of simply appreciating the experience. Now, granted, this is where I always get into the space where I'm like, I'm not telling you to be in an abusive situation and not stand up and say something, but there are, moments where sometimes we have this critical mind. And I know with my husband, we've been together 30 years. And so with him, I used to be like, I wish he would do this, and I wish he would do it, and why doesn't he do this? And And I realized that now, when I can appreciate what he has to offer in the relationship, who he is as an individual, the little things he says and does, my whole experience of our engagement has changed. Like, his job isn't to make me happy. His job isn't to heal me. His job isn't to make me feel whole or complete. That's a bunch of bullshit. And so to give somebody, to have that expectation, you're setting yourself up for failure. He's his whole person. I'm my whole person. And when I can start to appreciate that within him, I think that's what makes the magic in a relationship happen. Yeah. So that's what I take away from what you said.
Yeah. And that's the amazing thing about this stuff, guys. It's like, we could have a reason for why we like something, right? Because there's different perspective, different points of views, right? Different journeys, different levels. I guess you could kind of say, if you believe in levels, like if you want to get a little like mathematical about it, right? And so for me, like when I listen to that stuff, it's like, okay, we step away from, what would you say? What is one of the 4 agreements? Assuming,
be impeccable with your word.
Be impeccable with your word, right? Yeah. It's for me, when I started realizing that I was a fanatic, is when I allow myself to get into heated arguments, right? And that's being light with the term, right? It's being light with the situation. Like, I see people fight over shit that really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, these people don't pay you to go and fucking wear their shit and then to root for them, and then you get in a fist fight and you got a black eye and you go to jail because over football. That's how I knew I had a problem, right? And so it's really cool how we could take it, right? Similar book, right? Or you haven't even read it yet, but you understand the concept because it's all connected, people. It's just the way that the information is relayed over, right? And Isela's take on it and my take on it are like, we gain different ways of looking at situations from that.
Yeah, our
two different
perspectives
ways.
are going to be based on our lived experiences.
Yes.
And since you mentioned this book, and we have mentioned this book many times throughout our sessions, the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and his son also makes this. They write books together, and then they write books separately. And if you've never heard of that book, it's one of what I call sort of this, I don't want to say entry level, but it really is this beginning of awareness, like just basic four agreements. They're as simple as can be, but complex to live, because it's undoing the patterns of behavior that we have been so comfortable with, even when they don't serve us. And so if you have not picked up that book, pick it up. It's a small, simple read. And I'll drop the link in the comments below as well. My second book is Seed of the Soul.
Oh, that's Zuka.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zukoff, by Gary Zukav. And he came out, he was on Oprah. And
Fucking Oprah. Do
fucking
you got like
Oprah.
a sponsorship with her? Because I swear to
Seriously
God.
though, like I owe so much to this woman, because
Yes.
we didn't have, well, we had cable, but it was like, shitty cable. And I was a weird teenager. I watched her show. I recorded it when I couldn't watch it on a VCR. And I learned so much as she grew, because she grew over the course of many years. This book was published in 1989, so it's not a new book. It fell in my lap probably in my 20s, and he was on Oprah for several episodes. He was like a long-term guest, and it was the first time where the thought of reincarnation, evolution, our experience beyond this lifetime is like, can actually be true, that love is what is most important, and love is the soul, and the soul is love. Like, I was like, holy shit. Like, and here's the thing that's freaky about this. I should have had a weird reaction to it, but I didn't. I had like, somebody was finally speaking a truth that I already knew. I couldn't explain where I'd heard it before. I couldn't explain why it felt right, why my heart, like when I am in the next book, especially, there are books that sometimes when I read it, like A Course of Love was one of them, where I felt like a vibration in my body and my heart fluttering, like this is at some deepest level truth. And truth for me, because what's going to do that for you, or for people who are watching or listening, is going to be different. And again, that goes back to what I was saying, is you have to find what resonates with you. And how you know as it resonates with you is that it feels good. And it doesn't always feel pleasant, in terms of like, it's going to push you into thinking about yourself. It's going to push you into taking some responsibility. It's going to push you into a place of action that isn't comfortable. But there's a sense, an undercurrent of going, there's something very right about this at the deepest level of who I am. And for this book's sake, it is at the soul level. And so I will tell you, if you haven't picked this up, you can find it at Goodwill all the time if you're a thrift store shopper, because it's been around for a long time, but it's life's changing.
Yeah. I've never read that book. I read his newest one, The Universal Human.
I've never read that one.
Yeah, I believe it's Universal Human, and he touches on concepts from that book, and oh my gosh, blew my mind, right? It's really dope because it goes hand in hand, kind of like what we're learning in A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Right.
Very similar to what we learned in A Course of Love, right? And he makes it really simple and easy and practical, because some of these concepts are not really easy to talk about and really easy to explain. But his ideas, right? It really brought me in. So I think I'm going to go back and I will read that one to give me a little more context. But I've heard of him, and I've heard a lot of stuff, and I knew that he's the only one that's been on Oprah more times than anybody else.
Oh, well, and Eckhart as
No,
well. No.
Eckhart too, because I know Gary. I think it was because I remember. I don't know where I learned. I think it's from Mind Valley is where I learned about Gary, and that was one of his intros. He's been on Oprah more times than any other guest ever, and blah blah blah. So yeah, and it's great concepts in his books and really live by. So I'm glad you brought that up because now it reminds me that's a book to put on my to read list.
You know what's really interesting? And this happened with The Course of Love because we as a group read the whole book and then we decided to reread it. And I think it's true, you know, it's been a while since I've read this book, but what happens is it's that whole Buddhist, I think it's a Buddhist saying that when the learner is ready, the teacher shows up. And and really the teacher is within. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But these books unlock perspectives and things that we already know. And it provides, and at different times in our life, we're going to receive it differently. It's like we're ready for the next level. So this is why when we watch movies over and over and over again, and we're like, oh my, I never noticed that the first 13 times I saw it, right? It's the same with books. You read it and you will ingest what you're ready for. And then if you reread it again, especially if you give it a little bit of time, you're going to see things that you didn't see the first or second time around.
How about that reincarnation, people? Right? First you choose your parents, right? And then now you're reincarnated. So it's like, what if you chose the same parents twice?
Well, you do chose your same soul families. And
Yeah.
so it's really fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating, right? I like how Isela picks out the really, really deeper spiritual stuff, and I use more of a practical approach.
Which I think there's a balance between those two things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I believe and I love these concepts and ideas, right? Like I told of last week when I came out the closet about hearing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's more like out the bathtub because that's where I hear shit.
Yeah, Mark tends to get vulnerable and reveal a lot of stuff when we're online together.
Yes. You know, if I'm going to do it for the first time, might as well make it live, right? That's the way it is. That's what we call authenticity, right? And sometimes if we don't choose to do it, we might not ever do it. But what better way to do it than on a platform like this? And once again, thank you, Isela, for providing in this opportunity because I've grown a lot through these and I've learned a lot about you through these, and this friendship and this partnership is going to grow even more as we continue to move forward.
Yeah, same. I think that our different perspectives, but yet same in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Really, I think more than anything, we want our audience to know that there isn't one way or one path on this spiritual journey. And I think part of this is the willingness to be vulnerable, and that's what I'm hoping anyway to convey, is that invulnerability is our greatest strength. And you know, we're taught not to be, and it's scary as hell. I will tell you, you know, I just sort of came out as a medium, as someone who's I'm really good intuitively. We all have intuition. We all are able to do this. But I've been able to really tap into other people's sort of soul purpose. But I was still hiding in the closet after all these years. And on Facebook about a month ago or so, I put out to everybody, and these are colleagues who I work with. These are like that I basically came out and said, I'm tired of hiding this part of myself. Like I had this protected group of people that I shared this with. And, you know, I am in education. And so there was a great fear, still is to some degree, of the perception of me being crazy or woo-woo or trying to somehow I don't know, send a message, you know, the whole Christian perspective that this is the work of the devil, you know, having grown up Catholic, that's what plays in the back of my mind. And so for me, it was a huge leap. And to be public like this on YouTube and on Facebook and doing Facebook Lives is scary as shit. But we recognize that fear is part of the illusion, and fear is an ego experience, not in truth. And so I just keep coming back to the place of my alignment and being true to who I am.
Ooh, fear, right? I heard a cool acronym. I think, is that what you call it? An acronym when you put a word for it? Was forever exiting average reality.
Oh, I like that one.
Right? That was super dope. And I heard, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that one.
Not
Forever
that
exiting
one.
average average reality, right? And since we're on the topic of creating our own reality, right? That's what has really led me to my number one book.
Okay.
Right? My number one book, right? I came across it 2017. And it's by a fellow of the name Vishen Lakhiani. The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, right? It took what I was learning, right? And it was tough because Dr. Joe was in there also. But I chose
Dispenza? Joe
yeah,
Dispenza? Okay.
yeah. His book was Become Supernatural.
Right.
It was like a toss-up. But why I went with Vision, why I went with the Code of Extraordinary Mind is because it took concepts like Dr. Joe's, it took concepts like Eckhart's, it took concepts like Gary's, it took concepts like Ruiz, right? Yeah. And it made it practical and easy to digest. And it gave you the tools necessary in order to put it into play, right? Because knowing, we talked about this, right? Knowing is one thing. Taking inspired action is another, right? We talked about that. What you know and what you know how to do are different. So when I came across the Code of Extraordinary Mind, right? When you speak this language, this is word, it's called becoming unfuckwittable, right? And I was like, this mother lover speaks my language. Hell yeah. You know what I mean? Because we have this concept of spirituality, right? Yes. Right? We have the concept of spirituality and what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be wrapped up in shiny rainbows and unicorns and like angels. Like, yeah.
Right?
Sometimes you got to come and be a motherfucking badass, right? Sometimes you got to get down and do the dirty work, right? So when it took these concepts, right? What I really liked is he helped me, right? Dr. Joe Dispenza, what I would do with Dr. Joe in an hour, he broke it down into 20 minutes of meditation.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the biggest takeaways from that was forgiveness. Holy smokes, he helped me learn how to like forgive things, right? Forgive people, right? It's called the 6-phase meditation. That shit changed my life forever. It made it possible for me and you to sit here and have this conversation. Right. So that's my number one book because it took complex ideas and made it digestible and easy for anybody to read. Right. And when you hear this guy's story, it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do with Mind Valley. Right. Mind Valley is continuing to really change my life. And I promise you guys, one of these days, whether it's Mind Valley or a bigger company they create, I will be on one of those stages. Right. And that's made it possible to be sitting here and having this conversation with Isela right now. So that's why I go with the Code of the Extraordinary Mind. I mean, who doesn't want to have an extraordinary mind?
The Code of Extraordinary. I have not read that book, but I am familiar with Mind Valley. So I will definitely take a look at that because I think, again, it's what resonates with you.
Yes.
And when I was in college, no, I was in high school and I was taking a college class, an English class, and we were reading Plato. So not Play-Doh, because a lot of people say Plato, it's Plato. And I remember the allegory of the cave, which is one of his allegories. And he was talking about just
the shadow figures.
Yeah, the shadow figures. Yeah. And I was like in high school at the time. I was like 17. And I remember feeling like I was eating it up. Like the idea of taking this concept, this metaphor, and trying to break it down to figure out what he was trying to convey. Like I am one of those people that I thrive on that. I thrive on figuring out those pieces and trying to understand what he could have been thinking about. There are other people who just from an analytical perspective go, this plus this equals this, right? This is easier to understand, digest, and be able to articulate than trying to figure out how the pieces come together. And so there isn't one way. But when you look at all of these books, there's the undercurrent of the same concept, which is love is all that exists, forgiveness is the key, and that you are beyond this physical experience. Those are three significant, that I think in every book, when you look at Buddhists like Thich Nhat Hanh, his books, when you look at Joe Dispenza, when you look at, she's so many, even when you look at psychic work, like, what was her name? Sandra Brown, I think, when you look at some of her books, same messages.
Oh yeah, Sylvia Brown.
Sylvia Brown, that's what it was, Sylvia Brown. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you just made me think of something, right? When you were talking about that, right? Another one is nobody's coming to fucking save you. Okay. Nobody's coming to save you. You are your savior,
Yeah.
right? Now you have help, right? Depending on what religion you're in or what your belief system is, nobody's going to fucking fly down and magically save you. Those tools are going to be handed to you through the form of books, through the form of text, through the form of audio, video, this mother loving podcast, Brown and Spiritual as fuck, right? But we're not going to be able to do the work for you. Nobody could do this for you.
Yeah.
And that's what helped me with all these books. That's the next underlying thing in all these books is nobody's coming to save you. You are your own savior. It's already in you. It's being able to bring that shit out, right?
Yeah, and I think, I'm a really, really strong believer, and I don't know if anyone has read Atlas of the Soul. I think it's Brene Brown's latest book, and she's got an HBO Max series, a limited series based on this book. And
Ooh, I'm gonna watch
I
that.
I love Brene Brown because she does come from a research perspective, and I think a very third dimensional physical being perspective. And what I found in the first episode, in the first chapter of her book, she said that we seek out one another, we seek out connection from one another, thinking that somehow that's going to fulfill us and make us feel whole and complete. But all the work of connection and having these meaningful relationships begins with the relationship with self. Well, shit, she just said what is an underpinning in spiritual development. I don't know that she'll ever say that because she's a researcher and she's based in science. My dog. She's based in science, and so I don't know that she's ever going to come to that place to say that. But when I was listening to her, I was like, that's what we're teaching. That's what we're saying, that the relationship with self is unlocked by books of people who have written and put things together. Like, it's like it unlocks something within us. And if we're willing to go within and really figure out how does it align with the truth of who we are, we start to see the manifestations of those experiences in terms of, things like abundance and things like, what you pay attention to, you get more of. And so you start to see things work for you instead of against you, how you make sense of situations coming from a lens of it being possible instead of impossible. It's like it helps unlock things for us.
Yeah. How do you expect somebody to pleasure you if you can't pleasure yourself?
That's a whole different book, and I have a couple of suggestions for that too.
That's a whole different level, but that was going through my mind. It's like, no wonder why you're fucking unhappy sometimes, right? Can you learn to pleasure yourself first and then, right? Not having any expectations either, man. Go read the 4 Agreements.
So my number one book is the Book of Love and Creation. It's green. It's
wow,
green.
that kind of it's like transparent. It's like, right? Is it a ghost book? What the fuck?
No, right? The author, it's a channel text, and it's by Paul Selig. And I will tell you, I would not recommend watching Selig on YouTube, because the way he channels, the way he gets information from spirit, he mutters it and then he says it, and then he mutters it and then he says it, and it can be very difficult for people to pay attention to. But I will tell you that there's a series of 9 books, and they're broken into 3 books for each chunk. And they get deeper and deeper. And what it's actually doing is it's helping the unlayering of that onion. And so the first one is about love is all there is and what creation is really. And so it unlayers that. And there are these weird, if you're uncomfortable with it, or if it's weird, because there are things like mantras that sound like this. There's one of them that says, I know who I am, I know what I am, I know how I serve. And that as you move through these mantras vibrationally, you raise that vibration within yourself, because you become more in alignment. And I will tell you, the first time I actually listened to it on Audible, and the first time I listened to the very first book, my entire body vibrated at a level that I had never experienced before. And one by one, I would just the thing is I wouldn't try to think hard about it because it's a little complex in the way that it's delivered. I just try to lean into it and allow the experience to happen. It's kind of what you were talking about with your first book, about just allowing the experience without judgment of it. And so I just allow that to kind of happen, and I would just feel the vibration as I listened to it. And then because it was so intense in the content, I had to buy each book because, I make notations, and, I have to write, I do all the highlighting and all of that because it resonates so deeply with me. So the entire series is really a recommendation for me. But I will say that the journey from going from the You Can Heal Your Life to that beginning where I'm not a victim of my circumstances, to understanding my soul, right? Like that I'm more than my circumstances. And then going into what's beyond these circumstances was really a journey that I had to take. Had I read this first, I would have been like, fuck that. I don't know what the hell they're saying. It's a bunch of woo-woo garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my number one book.
Nice. When you were talking, you talked about Feel the Vibration. I thought about Marky Mark in the 80s, or was it early 90s, where he came out with the song Good Vibrations?
Yeah.
That's hella funny because I think Michelle's on here and she's listening and she brings that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, yeah, I go back to figure out where you're at. And just because of therapy, when I first started going to therapy, it's like this therapist didn't work. Like I didn't vibe with this therapist. Maybe I felt judged, or maybe I felt like it wasn't a safe place for me to really be vulnerable. So there are like thousands of other therapists. Your one-time negative experience is simply maybe helping you form a deeper understanding of what you need. And so then you go, oh, well, that one didn't work. Just like that. That one didn't work. Let me find a different one. So it's the same with books. It's the same with groups you join. It's the same with whatever path you take. You have to go, okay, does this resonate with me? How do I feel about this? And don't confuse your discomfort and with not working, because in the discomfort, that sometimes is the platform to motivate us to move into action, right? What are your thoughts, Mark?
And there's so many to really think about, right? This is my therapy, guys. Like I chose to come and have therapy sessions in real life. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't know what to expect. And I went to this whole experience with no expectations. And I didn't realize that this has been such a liberating experience in itself, right? To come up on here and share stuff with the world, just like how you just came out the closet, right? About being this medium and sharing with your colleagues, right? That I've had all this stuff within inside me that I've been able to keep to myself for so long, and it's been bottled up and it's been eating at me. And then just to come out here and what people would say, air your dirty laundry out. Yeah. I don't tell these stories for the fact of people saying, oh, poor you went through this, and oh, I'll take care of you. No, it's because these experiences created who I am today, and has allowed me to share, because there's going to be people, there's family members that are so adamant about holding all on to everything, and they think it's one, probably weak, or that I don't know what the fuck they think nowadays, right? Because I left that culture scape. I left those ideas, rules, right? Bullshit rules. They talked about this in the Code Extraordinary Mind, right? That's another word that's really awesome. Rules, right? That we're taught, that how could you go on here and tell these stories, right? And it's like, well, I'm not doing it for you. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not doing it for you. I'm not forgiving you for you, right? I'm doing this shit for me, right? I'm being selfish, and it's okay to be fucking selfish, right? And it's selfish in a way that's great for the soul to grow, right? It's saying, hey, I'm going to put me first, right? And take care of me. I'm going to fill my cup up, right? And then I'll be able to give you 100% of me, right? like in a relationship. Two half people don't make a fucking whole. Mathematics might tell you that, but in spirituality, in this realm of being a whole magnificent being, that equation doesn't really work. At least in my experience, it hasn't.
Yeah, same. And when my husband and I got together, that was the perspective because we were young, and I did have the expectation that he was supposed to fulfill me and make me happy and do all the things that would, please me. And fortunately enough, he was willing to take this journey with me. And if you can imagine the first time I say to him, oh, like I'm hearing people like talk to me. He's like, I could have had a husband like say, you are nuts. Like, I thought you were nuts, but now you're certifiably nuts. And he didn't. He was willing to learn more about it and was curious and lets me kind of have conversation. We have conversations about this. And it turns out that he's super highly intuitive as well, too. He just hasn't honed in on that skill or those gifts yet. So I think it's an amazing journey. And one of the things that we get in the danger of is comparing ourselves to others' journeys.
Guilty, right?
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. In the beginning, I was like, I want to see this. I want to feel that. Why do their gift? However, like in the same instance, right? There's people that look at me and are like, wow.
Right.
And I'm thinking, this is, you know what I mean? But it's I had to stop doing that, because the way I experience things, the way that I'm going is unique, right? And it's really cool because now I have friends that are just as unique, right, in their own way. And then we get to come together and have these conversations like me and Isela, right? And by the way, you're still very young, okay? You're still looking really amazing and whatnot. You said when you were younger, but I just wanted to remind you.
Oh, I'm not, I'm close to being 50. So I'm not exactly in my 30s. So yeah, I have a few more years on you. Not 20 years, but I have a few more years on you.
Not 20. Yeah. Do we have any questions out there? Anybody have any questions? I'm pretty sure Michelle has a question for Isela. Is she just like in love with you?
Michelle, you should join our Facebook. I do a Facebook every Wednesday, Facebook Live. You can watch or you can take part. And my cousin and I do intuitive readings, and they're just fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is. It's really fun just to come and hang out in the comments.
Yeah, seriously. We have fun. And I think it's so funny because you and I, like, we vibe in this level of like, fuck it, say whatever comes to your mind. My cousin is a little more conservative in some things. And I know I push the envelope with her and I can like see her blush. I can see her like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah. And then you have me in the comments backing you up. It's hella funny.
And I think that was one of the reasons why when you and I first started talking about this, when I said, what if we called this Brown and Spiritual AF? And here I had two reasons for it. The first one was there isn't enough representation of people of color. There just isn't. At least not across I would say that's visible. I think in communities, yes, but across the national visibility of spiritual teachers and people who are forming groups, I don't think there's enough there isn't enough people of color in that we see in the spiritual sort of realm or world, or moving down this path with intention. The second thing was I wanted to convey the message that because you say fuck and shit and damn doesn't make you less spiritual. It doesn't make you less aligned. It doesn't make you ignorant. And there's this perspective that, oh my goodness, they're just words, and words we have given power to. So whatever word you choose, if you have this perspective that it's a bad word, you're giving it that power, but you decided that. And so for me, it's always been in a form of expression. I always tell the story. I was 3 years old. We had those old tape players, where they were flat, and then you had to like put the cassette tape in and you push the two buttons. And I remember my family, my extended family, they would say, Mija, say fuck you. And I would say, fuck you. And I was like 3, and they laughed, they recorded it, they play it back. They thought it was the funniest thing. And I have to tell you, people gasp when I like, why would you teach your 3-year-old those words, like to say those words? And I will tell you that if it wasn't for this side of my family who love me, adore me, still do, I felt so connected to and safe on that side of my family, that they were in part what built my resiliency. So we said, fuck you. So we said, we used inappropriate, what's considered inappropriate language. I felt love and connection from them. And so I wanted to convey the message that we don't all have to sound like Eckhart or Deepak, that, we can convey ourselves this way and still be just as aligned.
And that's what's really dope, because that's what brings your unique audience, right? That's what's going to bring those into your life, or they're going to attract us into their lives, right? And so we could connect on that level, so they could say, wait a minute, okay, my idea of what I thought this was is totally different, like what Vision did for me. Like, oh, wait a minute, okay, hold on, this is a little more, it makes more sense to me. I belong in here. I don't have to look at myself shameful way when I like to say fuck, right? And it's really cool. It's just fun, guys. This is really plain. We get to come up here and we get to have conversations and we just play, right? When it comes down to it, it's that's what we're doing, right? Lights, camera, action.
Do we have any other questions? Hi, Michelle. I'm so glad you joined us again this week, or every 2 weeks we do this. And we have other people watching. So and you know what's really cool? I was looking at our podcast numbers. We are really climbing in numbers, which is really awesome of people listening. So it's very, very cool.
Slowly but surely, huh?
Yep. Yeah. Safety and love connections, everything, including words, from the intentionality behind it and how it's delivered. Yeah. And, there is the part on how it's received. And I think then you go to someone else who resonates with you. That's all.
Yeah. And look right here, energy of words. Right. The energy of words. This is another book that really kind of changed the way I speak. Right. Changed the way I rearranged the way I speak. Right. Because I used to say a lot of things like, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, what an idiot. Like, you know what I mean? And the context of those words. So I really changed those around. I don't say like good morning. Now I say great morning, great afternoon. Right. I changed that. For me, good is mediocre. Right. I want to leave that average. I'm exiting that average reality. Right. And little by little, these books, right, say the same type of thing. It just gives you more of a specific area of how to navigate your spirituality or your emotional state, right, or your physical state and whatnot. So yeah, words they're just words, and we give them the power, right? They're symbols.
Power. Right? Yep. So Michelle's asking, was there a time period where you delved more into your intuitive reading gifts? Yeah. So we all can do this. And I will say that till I am done with this lifetime. I don't think that I'm special. I just think I got out of the way. I got out of the way of the alignment of how messages come through. When I was about 16 years old, I was super, super depressed in an abusive home. And I was trying to hook up a phone through the wall, like a landline, because it was a long time ago. So I was trying to hook up a phone so that I could call my dad, because things had gotten so bad at home. And I had an extra phone. It was back in the day when like Conair made like these plastic cheap phones. We had a whole bunch of them that my mom had bought to give away as gifts. I snuck one out of the gift closet, and I was one night pulled the cord out, the big cable, that coaxial thing, out of the wall, and I was trying to figure out how to hook this phone up because I was about to lose my mind. I was suicidal in a lot of ways. And I pulled the cord out and I couldn't get it to work. I went to sleep, and I had a dream on how to make the connection. And I woke up and I did exactly what was in my dream. It was like 3 a.m, and I got that dial tone. And I remember that the feeling, that sensation when I got that dial tone, because it was like my safety net. It was like, now I can reach out to people and I didn't feel so isolated. And, my mom pretty much kept me in the house, and I couldn't go anywhere except school and back. And I had to care for my sister. So I didn't have any freedom to leave. And so that was a huge moment for me. And it was something that made me believe that there was something beyond, and I grew up Catholic. So it was like, I always believed in God, but I felt like there was more of like God was helping me. And so that faith is what got me through my teen years. And when I got older, I kept developing. I like new things. I would know things about people. I worked in crisis intervention, so I would know things about children. I would know things about family situations. Had no reason to, there was no way I could have known, right? In 2012, when everyone was talking about the Mayan calendar, I had this sensation in my chest where I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I didn't know what was happening. My friend said to me, Isela, why don't you do some writing? Just kind of write and let anything that's coming to you come through you. And so I started practicing that. And it's called channeled writing. There's lots of ways that people perceive this or call this practice, but I just started writing whatever came to me. And all of a sudden my handwriting started changing. And I started to get messages that way. And what I got, one of the early messages I got was, we want to pay homage to the man of the sacred land. And I'm like, what the fuck is the land of the sacred man? Who is that? Turns out it's my husband. And I started to hear drums, like Native American drum. I started to hear that really loud. I couldn't escape it. And they wanted to pay homage to him. They wanted to pay homage to him for the sacrifices of in a prior lifetime. And it turns out little things had come together where he used to be an Indian chief, a very well recognized Indian chief. And I had a line and I started to see this line of elders from all Native American tribes wanting to thank him. And I thought, I have lost my fucking mind. And I was writing this stuff down that just kept coming to me. I thought I was crazy. It was my voice, but it wasn't. I mean, it was just freaky. Finally, I got the courage to go to my husband. I remember standing there going, okay, so remember that aura picture that we took? We took an aura picture of him and he had feathers. And the people who were looking at the picture had never seen anything, but you clearly can see the feathers above his head. And I said, remember the feathers that we saw in your picture? And then I started to tell him what was happening. And I just, that was it opened the dam for me. And when we started to get confirmation of things that have happened, or what the things they told me, and I looked up the sacred land, where that is, and the blood of the sacred land, I found that online. And I'm like, the time frame came to me. And I'm like, okay, Isela, you just need to trust. You just need to trust. And once I stopped questioning, and I still question, but once I started to really trust it, more and more messages started to come through for me.
And you're still married.
Yeah. And he doesn't think I'm crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's fucking awesome.
I know, right? He has his own experiences. He sees his guide. He can feel angels. I mean, so he's had his own experiences as a result, right? Because when you and I talk, Mark, it's like we both get insights, right? And then we go away and all of a sudden things click and we go, oh yeah, that made sense. Or, oh yeah, I can see that. So we little by little are opening up that we're making our way into truth. And so that's, I think, what happens when we are around people who are open and willing. We help elevate one another to that experience.
Yep. And that reminds me of how I show up on these calls, right? I just trust that it's going to be amazing. Typically we wait till the last minute to figure something out. Well, last night Isela was like, hey, I have this idea, right? What do you think about it? Or do you have a better one? Or I'm up on ears for whatever. And I was like, yeah, let's just roll with it, right? And then I just put it out of my mind and just said, okay, I'll just figure it out when we get there, right? Because my idea then, people, this is how amazing this is. This is how intricate it could be. I could have had 4 three books yesterday and why I thought they were the greatest. And they woke up in the morning and had a different three books for why I think they're the greatest. Right. So it's forever changing moment to moment.
Yeah.
Right. So anything we ever say or everything we ever do is timeless. So when it hits your ears, even if it's 20 years from now, you're listening to this podcast, like on some other device that's not even created yet. So like maybe you're just born with this podcast in your head because the technology is so crazy and you become a cyborg, right? This is going to hit your ears and you're going to be like, wow.
Right.
These motherfuckers were crazy back then, but it's relevant till now.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Michelle, for hanging out with us.
What did Michelle say? She says things to other people that are meant for them, huh?
Yeah, meant for her, but then for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's when you speak truth, you give other people permission to do the same. And that's why for a long time I felt like I was, when I wasn't speaking my truth, because I was outside of my, people who I'm surrounded by, and when I wasn't, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. So when you speak truth from a place of love, you do give other people permission to do the same.
Yeah. And the first time me and Michelle first started talking, she said some interesting things to me that just came to her. It's like, I just had to tell you this. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, keep allowing that stuff to come to you, Michelle, and get out the way, yo. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that really wraps up today's episode of Brown and Spiritual as Fuck, where we talked about the three books that are three top books in this moment and why we think they are top books. And there's many more out there, right? And I'm pretty sure that for me is probably going to change. And once again, you guys can find me on Mark_my_magnificence on Instagram. I'm the most active on there, and you can see my daily updates and when I post about our Brown and Spiritual AF or the things that I have coming up here pretty soon. And Miss Isela?
I am at iselagarcia.com, and I'm also on Love Being on Facebook, Love Being Isela Garcia, and Embracing Soul's Journey on Facebook, where I do my lives on Wednesdays, 5:30 Pacific time.
Cool. Once again, you guys have a great day, and we look